Hello YouTube and welcome back to another DTG Productions video. Today our topic is not about a specific historical person or event. Today we are taking a look at what I consider to be the 10 most interesting or impressive American castles. I know many of you may be thinking, American castles? How absurd. But yes, I assure you, there are actually dozens, if not hundreds of castles in the contiguous United States, many of which are medieval style. Now just to clarify, they are all technically Renaissance castles, with a small r, because they were all built after the medieval period, and the word Renaissance in this context merely refers to a rebirth or reemergence, and that is the category that all of these castles will fall under. However, as an interesting aside, many of these castles were actually in far better shape than their European counterparts, since they were built more recently. So if you get a chance, I highly recommend checking them out. But without any further ado, let's dive on in and start off with number 10. Okay, so you know how I said that these were all Renaissance castles and that I would specifically be looking at medieval styled ones? Well, that is mostly true, except for this first one. This castle is actually estimated to be about 800 years old, with most historians and archaeologists agreeing that it was built sometime between 1100 AD and 1425 AD, which actually places it within the medieval period. At least it would had this castle been built in Europe. However, it is not what many would picture when thinking of a castle, lacking many of the advanced techniques that were being employed by European castles of the time. However, based on the definition of a medieval castle that I am most familiar with, that being a fortified personal home built sometime between 500 and 1500 AD, I would say that this fits that description, and is a legitimate medieval castle. So, suck it, Europe. As far as the name Montezuma being attached to it, that is not very historically accurate. This name was given to the structure in the 1860s when Americans first found it and assumed that it must have been connected to the Aztecs, and so therefore named it after the first Aztec they could think of, that being the long-dead Emperor Montezuma. However, archaeological evidence suggests that not only was this structure completed nearly half a century before Montezuma would have been born, but it is in no way connected to Aztec culture at all. But hey, the name still sounds cool. As far as the castle itself, there are about 20 buildings protected inside the outer wall that are all surprisingly well preserved given how long it sat empty and unmaintained. It is situated about 90 feet or 27 meters for you metric users up a sheer limestone cliff. The precariousness of this dwelling's location and its immense scale of floor space across 5 stories suggests that the Sinagua were daring builders and skilled engineers. Access into the structure was most likely permitted by a series of portable ladders, which made it difficult for enemy tribes to penetrate the natural defenses of the vertical barrier. It is speculated that the Sinagua chose to build the structure so high up to avoid damage from the annual flooding of the Beaver Creek, which was directly adjacent to the castle. The region's population likely peaked around 1300 AD, with the castle housing between 30 and 50 people in at least 20 rooms. A neighboring segment of the same cliff wall suggests that there was an even larger dwelling, sometimes known as Castle A, around the same time, of which only the stone foundations have survived. Its discovery in 1933 revealed many Sinagua artifacts and greatly increased understanding of their way of life. At number 9, we have Belvedere Castle, a small tourist location in Central Park, New York City. This one earns its relatively low spot on the list by being kind of cool, but mostly just a tacky tourist attraction in one of the worst cities on earth. That's right, New York blows. Come at me. Named for the Italian meaning beautiful view, Central Park's Belvedere Castle offers parkgoers exactly what its name implies. With its 2 balconies, it supplies wonderful panoramic views that include some of Central Park's most beautiful and famous landmarks: the Della Corte Theater, the Great Lawn, the Turtle Pond, and the Ramble. Originally designed in 1865 by Calvert Vaux and Jacob Ray Mould, Belvedere Castle was intended to be a Victorian folly, a fantasy structure that provides a great backdrop and views, but without a real intended purpose. With its strong stone facade, grand turret, and flag, the castle was merely a stunning attraction in Central Park. Inside, visitors will discover a vast collection of natural history artifacts, such as skeletons and papier-mâché birds. There are also a few microscopes and telescopes on the premise to give guests insight into how naturalists study the world. Those who want to explore Central Park from a scientific standpoint can use this castle's field packs that contain binoculars, reference materials, maps, and a notepad to jot down observations. Finally, for bird watchers, the castle is an ideal location to catch a glimpse of hawks, kestrels, or ospreys. So if you ever have to visit the garbage pile of a city known as New York, at least you can escape to this semi-cool location and look at some birds or something. So next up at number 8 we have Castle Farms, a historic attraction located in Charlevoix, Michigan. This castle really isn't what I would call medieval style, but it is pretty cool. Plus, it's in the Midwest, so that's pretty neat. Open year-round, Castle Farms is one of northern Michigan's top historic attractions, as well as one of the Midwest's premier wedding venues. Visitors can stroll throughout the magnificent stone buildings dating back to 1918 and enjoy gorgeous gardens. A variety of museum-quality collections featuring castles, antique toys, and royalty memorabilia from around the world are displayed throughout the buildings. The castle's 1918 museum showcases items from that time era, plus World War I memorabilia. Children delight in feeding the huge rainbow trout swimming in the reflection pond, playing a game of giant chess or hide-and-seek with the fairies and gnomes dwelling in the enchanted forest. In summary, I would say that this is a beautiful place that probably makes for some really cool weddings, but I wouldn't want to defend it from an invading horde of Hungarian mercenaries. But if you're in the area, it is probably worth checking out. Plus, given how popular it is, you'll likely find some pretty swanky parties to crash. So, at number 7, we have another popular wedding destination in Boldt Castle. A beautiful castle located near Alexandria Bay, New York, in the famed 1000 Islands region. This whole island is a sight to see. The castle itself shares the island with the famous Boldt Yacht House. And if that sounds too posh, don't worry. Tickets for adults to tour the island are only $13, and it's only $7.50 for kids, and anyone under the age of 4 gets in for free. The tours are self-guided with information aids available to answer any questions you may have. Your ticket entitles you to a one-day pass to the island, so spend as little or as much time as you like visiting. Tour boat transportation is not included. The castle itself is actually pretty damn big, with over 120 rooms within those thick stone walls. The architectural style is a mismatch of Richardsonian, Romanesque, Victorian, Gothic Revival, Rococo, Beaux Arts, and modeled after a Rhineland castle. Construction began on Boldt Castle in 1900 at the bidding of millionaire hotel magnate George C. Boldt as a tribute to his beloved wife Louise. Boldt Castle was designed as their summer dream home, a castle rivaling those of Europe, built on the St. Lawrence River in the heart of the Thousand Islands. However, it was not to be. Mrs. Boldt passed away suddenly just months before the completion of the castle. Mr. Boldt was inconsolable and immediately stopped all construction on Hart Island, leaving the property vacant for over 70 years. Devastated, indeed mortally bereaved, George Boldt ordered the construction of the castle to stop, even though it was only months away from completion. The grief-stricken widower never again returned to Hart Island. Boldt died alone in his room at the Waldorf Astoria in 1916 at the age of 65. The entire Boldt Castle property was then purchased by a wealthy fruit company owner named Edward John Noble. Over the next few decades, the E.J. Noble Foundation opened the castle and its grounds as a tourist attraction, but it was not well kept, maintained, or even secured, and the unfinished structures fell victim to weather, neglect, vandals, thieves, and even a fire which gutted the beautiful stone powerhouse in 1939. However, in the late 1970s, Boldt Castle experienced a miraculous turn of fortune. The Thousand Islands Bridge Authority acquired Hart Island and the nearby yacht house in 1977 for $1, under the agreement that all revenues obtained from the castle operation would be applied towards restoration, so that the island would be preserved for the enjoyment of future generations. So, at number 6, we start to get into the castles that I think are very cool, and every medieval history buff should visit at some point. This castle is Hammond Castle. Hammond Castle is located on the Atlantic coast in the Magnolia area of Gloucester, Massachusetts. The castle, which was constructed between 1926 and 1929, was the home and laboratory of John Hayes Hammond Jr. He was an inventor who was a pioneer in the study of remote control and held over 400 patents. The building is composed of modern and 15th and 16th and 18th century architectural elements and sits on a rocky cliff overlooking Gloucester Harbor. At present, the castle operates as the Hammond Castle Museum, displaying Hammond's collection of Roman, medieval, and Renaissance artifacts, as well as exhibits about his life and inventions. The Great Hall contains a huge pipe organ, which has been used for concerts and recordings by many famous organists, including Richard Elisar and Virgil Fox. Unfortunately, as of 2015, the organ is no longer functional. Tours are self-guided and visitors may explore 8 living areas including a dining room and the bedrooms, an inner courtyard, 2 towers, and the Great Hall. The castle's lawn overlooking the harbor serves as a location outside of museum hours for weddings and various other private functions. For the past 25 years, the castle has run a special Halloween-themed haunted house tour every October. Volunteers for the production include high school students from the Cape Ann, the North Shore region. The Halloween fundraiser attracts thousands of visitors per year. Coming in at the halfway point of number 5, we have Castle Gould, also known as Hempstead House, the Gould Guggenheim Estate, or Sands Point Preserve. It is a large estate that was started by Howard Gould and completed by Daniel Guggenheim in 1912. It is located in Sands Point, New York. Howard Gould and his wife, actress Catherine Clemens, purchased the estate property in 1900 and 1901. Castle Gould was the first of 4 mansions built here, designed by architect Augustus N. Allen in 1902, modeled after Ireland's Kilkenny Castle. Completed in 1904, this impressive 100,000 square foot limestone building was intended to be the main residence on the estate, but when Catherine decided that it did not suit her, Howard proceeded to build Hempstead House. Castle Gould then served as the stable, carriage house, and servants' quarters, and now houses the Visitor Center, Great Hall, and a 7,000 square foot New York State certified soundstage, aka the Black Box. The Great Hall is accessed through the rotunda beneath the castle's massive clock tower, often used for private events. This space is a fully renovated multi-purpose room with great vaulted ceilings, wrought iron chandeliers, plush draperies over enormous windows overlooking the preserved grounds, and the distant view of the Long Island Sound. I actually like this castle a lot, and would have ranked higher on the list if not for it basically being a giant wasted opportunity to this day. Seriously, they have this huge awesome castle, and instead of doing anything cool with it, they use it for cultural events and yoga classes. At the very least, it should follow in its original inspiration and get turned into a giant medieval-style alehouse and inn. Now in the home stretch, we have number 4, Bannerman Castle. A castle built by a Scottish-American immigrant on a rocky island in the Hudson River. This one is actually pretty dope. Despite being in a state of general disrepair, it is a very interesting location that I cannot recommend visiting enough. Bannerman Castle is located on Palopel Island, which is about 7 acres of mostly rock in the Hudson River, near Cornwall-on-Hudson, New York. It was built by Frank Bannerman VI, not as a home, but as a place to store items such as weapons and ammunition that he purchased at government auctions. Frank Bannerman personally designed the island's buildings, docks, turrets, garden walls, and moat in the style of old Scottish castles. In 1967, the family sold Bannerman Castle to New York State, which had plans to open the island as a park, and for a short time in 1968 they ran tours of the island. But the night of August 8, 1969, a fire of unknown origin destroyed all of the buildings. There is now a group called the Bannerman Castle Trust, an organization dedicated to stabilizing the ruins of Bannerman Castle and opening the island to the public. So, unlike the other castles on this list, this one is like many European castles, and is more of a crumbling ruin than anything else. However, maybe someday the New York Parks and Recreation Department will get it completely restored and bring this cool medieval-style fortress back to life. So at number 3 we have one that would have likely been number 1 or 2 if not for a few detractors, which I will get into shortly. This castle is NEWMAN'S Castle, a medieval-style castle outside of Belleville, Texas. Now, after researching this castle on their website and looking through the pictures, I was impressed. It looks pretty sweet. Now sure, it isn't what I would call an accurate representation of a medieval castle, but it is an accurate representation of a stereotypical medieval castle from a movie made between the 60s and 80s. But it is very cool, and mostly functioning. The castle features a moat, a massive working 3,000-pound drawbridge with an accompanying portcullis, a chapel, 5 round-cornered turrets, a courtyard, and a central keep with a dramatic view of the surrounding lands. A perimeter wall encompasses the castle, ensuring that you are safe from oncoming marauders during your visit. Or, at least, that is what the sales pitch on their website promotes. I will now take a break to talk about the bad things about this castle before continuing on with the description. So, unfortunately, the bad thing about this castle is I would not recommend visiting it. Now, I have personally never been there. However, after reading several dozen reviews from various sites, I can say that if you decide to go there, your experience will likely not be pleasant. And that is for multiple legitimate reasons. The first is that most reviews that I read agree that the man who owns the place is unprofessional, annoying, arrogant, and terrible at providing the service that he charges so much for. I won't go too deep into it, but based on the amount of negative reviews I saw, many of which share multiple common themes, I would not be too quick to discount them. To summarize, the place is a mess. The owner is a dick. The food is acceptable at best and downright gross at worst. And the service sounds like it's from one of those places where the whole gimmick is that they treat you shitty. Except here, they're actually just dicks. That occasionally come off as racist, and sometimes might accidentally make fun of mentally disabled kids, and deaf people. Oopsie. I should mention that there is a mysterious character that shows up in many reviews known as the Assistant, who is actually great, and can probably be attributed with most of the good reviews that this place has gotten. Oh, and did I mention that tours cost $20 per person? That may not sound too bad at first glance, but if you want to go as a group or a family, that will quickly add up, and you will likely walk away feeling disappointed after having paid $200 or more to be treated poorly while baking in the famous Texas heat. Just saying. But in any case, back to the castle itself. It is actually very cool, with a full fortified wall surrounding the buildings, and authentic vaulted ceilings in the Great Hall, a functional trebuchet which they demonstrate, a drawbridge, and portcullis. Unfortunately, there are no machicolations, and the crenels of the crenellations are way too small to actually be useful. So from a historically accurate point of view, they would not be what I would call useful. However, given that construction started in 1998, it is still pretty impressive that this castle exists at all. I may visit it if I ever find myself down in Texas, but likely not until it is owned by someone a little more stable who knows how to run a business in the service industry. So, coming in at number 2, we get into what I consider to be the true must-sees for medieval junkies in the United States. This castle is Loveland Castle. And I know you may be thinking, isn't that the place where Michael Jackson allegedly perved on a bunch of kids? And to that I say, no. You're thinking of the Neverland Ranch. But I can understand the confusion. Loveland Castle is a medieval-style castle located on the banks of the Little Miami River, north of Loveland, Ohio, which is where it gets its strange name. It is, of course, known by most as Château La Roche, and is to this day a museum, and an inspiration for many medieval enthusiasts who dream to build their own castle someday. Construction began in the 1920s by a Boy Scout troop leader, World War I veteran, and medieval enthusiast Harry D. Andrews. He built the castle on promotional plots of land that were obtained by paying for one-year subscriptions to the Cincinnati Enquirer. And the story only gets better from here. Andrews named his castle after a military hospital in the Château La Roche in southwest France, where he was stationed during the First World War. The literal translation being Rock Castle in French. So, you know how I mentioned inspiring earlier? Well, here's why. For over 50 years, Andrews worked on this castle project. He pulled stones from the nearby Little Miami River, and when that supply was exhausted, he molded bricks with cement out of quart milk cartons. That should be impressive to everyone, and not just me. This man built his own castle, by hand, first with rocks that he pulled out of a river, and then with homemade cement bricks. What a badass. When Andrews died in 1981, he willed the castle to his Boy Scout troop, the Knights of the Golden Trail. And we'll touch back on them in a little bit. The castle has been extensively upgraded and renovated in the years since Andrews' death, and has been mostly completed by the Knights of the Golden Trail. The East Tower now houses a short video presentation on Andrews' quest to finish his dream. The walls of the upstairs chapel feature many stones brought back by Andrews in his world travels, and others sent to him from foreign locations by his friends and followers. Recently completed are an expansion to the outside gardens and a greenhouse. So to touch back on the Knights of the Golden Trail, here's a quote from their website for this castle that I will read in its entirety so you can just soak it all in. The historic Loveland Castle and Museum Château La Roche was built as an expression and reminder of the simple strength and rugged grandeur of the mighty men who lived when knighthood was in flower. It was their knightly zeal for honor, valor, and manly purity that left mankind out of the moral midnight of the Dark Ages and started it towards the gray dawn of human hope. Present human decadences proves a need for similar action. Already, the ancient organization of knights have been reactivated to save society. Any man of high ideas who wishes to help save civilization is invited to become a member of the Knights of the Golden Trail, whose only vows are the 10 Commandments. Château La Roche is the world headquarters and residence of the Knights of the Golden Trail. I couldn't help it. I had to include that in the video. So, for all of you out there who sat up at night wishing you could join a private order of religious knights and right the world's wrongs, here you go. Before we get to number 1, we can look at some honorable mentions. As far as honorable mentions go, there are many mansions in the United States, especially in California and all over the East Coast, that are often called castles, such as the Breakers. But I don't care about them enough to give them a spotlight. But there is one that I'm sure many of you know of, but probably don't think of when considering famous castles. This one is, of course, Cinderella Castle, one of the main attractions at Disney World. Yes, brought to us by our powerful corporate overlords over at Disney, we have the famous fantasy castle inspired by Disney's Cinderella. So in that spirit, here is Disney's description of their very own White Castle. Cinderella Castle welcomes you to a magical world where dreams come true. The 189-foot landmark boasts lofty spires and ornate turrets, and is the gateway to Fantasyland. Surrounded by a tranquil moat, the grounds offer an array of picture-perfect photo ops. Explore lush lawns, gardens, and Cinderella's own wishing well. So if you ever find yourself at Disney World, which I guess is probably a good chance, you might just have to stop in. So at number 1, we have my personal favorite, Castello Di Amorosa, a working vineyard in California's Napa Valley that also just so happens to be a beautiful castle. Castello Di Amorosa is the realization of an all-consuming passion. Fourth-generation winemaker Dario Satui built an authentically styled 13th century Tuscan castle winery to honor his Italian heritage and deep love for medieval architecture. In 1993, he finally found the ideal parcel, 171 acres near Calistoga, where Colonel William Nash had planted one of California's first vineyards in 1846. Dario bought the property, which had acres of beautiful forests and hills, a stream and a lake, and a great Victorian home where he decided to settle. Dario began construction of Castello di Amorosa winery in 1994. He first intended to build an 8,500 square foot building without cellars, but gradually the project morphed into a 13th century Tuscan castle spanning 121,000 square feet, which is 3 acres, with 107 rooms, 4 underground levels and 4 above ground levels. Determined to make the Castello authentic in every respect, he used only old, handmade materials, and built it employing the same methods and materials that would have been used 700 to 800 years ago. He is quoted to have said, "You can't fake something like this. You either do it right, or people will know it's not authentic." It took more than 8,000 tons of hand-chiseled local stone and nearly 1 million antique bricks imported from Europe to complete this castle. More than 200 containers of old materials and furnishings were shipped over from Europe to decorate the interior. The construction took 15 years and opened to the public on April 7, 2007. Today, Castello di Amorosa is considered an architectural masterpiece, with all the elements of an authentic medieval castle: a moat, drawbridge, 5 towers, high defensive ramparts, courtyards, and a loggia, a chapel, stables, an armory, and even a torture chamber. 107 rooms in total, no rooms alike, containing some of the most beautiful vaulted wine cellars in the world. Castello di Amorosa has fulfilled Dario's dream of producing superior quality wines with the same love and attention to detail that went into the building of this castle. So personally, I rank this castle in an esteem higher than the rest on this list combined. I think that this masterpiece is not only a must-visit location for medieval enthusiasts in America, but for all of you out there across the pond, for it is truly a stunning place and a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So that does it for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. I just wanted to show all of you history buffs out there on this side of the pond that you don't have to go all that far to experience some truly great castles in real life. That being said, I would love to someday visit many of the fantastic European castles in the UK, the Czech Republic, France, Spain, and of course Germany. And hopefully someday I will be able to. And I hope the same for you. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.